Hey, Dave Diggle here. Look, if you're an athlete, particularly if you're a young athlete and you're finding that maybe you're not performing under pressure, or you're performing but with inconsistencies in your performance. Sometimes you're on, sometimes you're off. Or you're finding that you're frequently getting injured or you're fearing getting injured. Or you're dealing with the usual fears and anxieties that come with a performer, then you're going to want to watch this video as I address some of those issues that you're probably facing on a daily basis. As an athlete, we often think every challenge that we're going through is unique to us, that we're the only ones having this challenge. We're the only ones who have those fears, those doubts, those imposter syndrome moments. Or we think we're the only ones out there who's performing inconsistently. And what we tend to try and do then is overtrain, trying to catch up to the other athletes. What we don't tend to realize is every athlete on the planet is having similar challenges. So we have an onboarding process for our athletes who are undertaking the Smart Mind Mental Gladiator. That's our 30-day online and live mental performance training we run. Part of that onboarding process is an intense unpacking of what's working for that athlete individually and what's not. So what's holding them back from being a good performer, a consistent performer, or someone who's in control. And as such, I wanted to share with you some of the more common responses we get from athletes before they start the Gladiator program. So the 5 biggest challenges these athletes have identified is, like, number 1, not performing under pressure. So no surprise there. I hear this daily from athletes, and they're telling me all the time that they can't put it out there on game day. It's almost like they're almost an athlete or almost a good performer, but it's just not being able to do it on the big stage. Number 2 is inconsistency, which can be even more frustrating than any other one, because you know you can do it, you've gone out there, you've done it, but then you go through this roller coaster cycle of not often being able to put it out there and frequently putting it out there. So that inconsistency can be a real hard one to swallow. The third one is losing skills, learning something and then losing it, particularly as you build up towards a competition or a performance, such as closed skills like a rugby player or a football player, soccer player, or hockey player who's shooting for goal. They know how to do that, but under pressure, they feel like they've lost that skill. Or even racing car drivers or routine-based sports where they go out there, big chunks of their performance has gone missing at the most important time. The fourth one is the injury cycle. Now, this is twofold. This is a fear of getting injured and then a lack of knowing how to get back into it. This is incredibly human and incredibly normal. And the fifth biggest issue is fears and anxieties. Now, we have general fear and general anxiety around game day, around competition, around training or selection, or even learning new skills. And when your sport isn't allowing you to enjoy it, you're dreading going training or you're dreading going for the competition, then we need to do something. Is there anything in that you can identify with straight away, or you just ticked every single box? So what I wanted to do in this short video for you is I wanted you to show you, obviously we can't go through the whole Gladiator program, that's a 30-day program. But I wanted to take one strategy for each one of these and share that with you, and also explain a little bit of why you're having that in the first place. What's going on inside your brain that's causing some of these challenges in your performance. So the first one we identified, the real big one, the big elephant in the room, is not performing under pressure. Simply, if there's a huge difference between how you train and how you perform, then you're not going to take your training into the competition. And when we look at some of the best performers on the planet, their goal isn't only to win. Now, don't get me wrong. They're highly competitive athletes. They all want to win. They'll probably do what I would do, would gnaw your leg off to beat you. But the reality is, the vast majority of the most successful athletes on the planet have more often a focus on improving than just winning. Especially in the early stages when they're building to win, making sure they've got that replicability. So if you're focused on the what, that end step of just winning, then you're probably 100% focusing on the wrong aspect of how you win. And especially when we're looking at the consistency and replicability of being a champion, the how becomes super important. So if you're going to focus on winning, then more likely you're looking at do not lose, and which increases your likelihood of losing anyway. So if we want to focus on how we win and how we take control of our performance, we need to be specifically tailored around our hows. How you prepare, how you perform, how you collect data, how you recover, how you respond to challenges, and how you grow. So the solution really to number one is not performing under pressure is know your hows. If you can know your hows, you can trust them. Number two was inconsistency. And as I said to you before, this is probably one of the most frustrating issues of all, because you can go out there and do it sometimes, but then other times you can't. So you start to self-doubt. And again, this is along with our hows. Your mental blueprint is your skill and your routine. How? It's that process inside your brain that when you press go, you follow. So the cleaner and the clearer they are, the smoother the process for your brain. And it's more likely to create that consistency and that level of skill that you're looking for. A little bit of a nerd thing here, the prefrontal cortex of our brain, that designs that how for us. But it's clunky and chunky. What we want to do is take it from that prefrontal cortex and put it into our subconscious. And the way we do that is by increasing our trust in our skill. And the only way we do that is learning to trust. We need to know how to trust a skill. So for this one, number two, it's really important that you know the specific metrics of how you do that skill. What does success look like to you? Number three was losing skills. And I get this all day, every day, where an athlete gets anxious and they'll tell me, I've lost my skills. I can't no longer perform that skill. So let me first put your mind at rest. You haven't lost the skill. What you've done is you've misplaced it in your brain, in part of your memory, to a less efficient and effective place. We've added way too much emotion to that. So it's not lost. You've just relocated it somewhere where you can't find it. And again, this links back to the quality of our blueprints. The biggest mistakes athletes make is they skim over the skill acquisition process. They're in such a hurry to learn the skill that they forget to know how that skill works. It's a little bit like if you're building a cartoon. Every frame, every still that you draw needs to be the best it possibly can before you move on to the next one. And then that has to be the best one too. So when you press go on that film, what you're seeing is a sequence of really good slides or frames. That's exactly how our brain works. So it needs to have a very clear pattern. It has to have very defined frames. It needs to have a trigger and needs to have an end step. Imagine if you played that cartoon and you removed every second frame from that. It would look very clunky and chunky, and you probably wouldn't end up trusting at all. That's what's happening inside your brain. So the strategy around this is be very, very clear with understanding your blueprint and being very clear with each frame of that process. We need to be able to build the blueprint. We need to have detail around the blueprint. We need to be able to trigger it. We need to be able to trust it. The fourth one is our injury cycle. Now, this is incredibly complex. There's so many different variants to this and different parts that go into creating this complex issue. And probably the first thing is our physicality. If we're not physically capable of doing the skill, then we increase our likelihood of being injured. If our technical awareness around that skill isn't where it needs to be, then again, we increase the likelihood of becoming injured. So where the mental aspect of injury prevention and injury recovery come in, a couple of real key areas that we need to be clear on. One of them is focus, one of them is process, and the other one is a skill blueprint. In this short video, we're just going to look at the focus aspect on that. And we know we get what we focus on. So if we focus on not getting injured, the likelihood is we increase our potential of being injured. Because what we tend to do is when we're ultra focused on that and we're being driven by a fear of not getting injured, not wanting to be dropped from a team, then we'll change our technique or we'll change our process. So that might be we change the way that we take off, or we change the way that we land. And because we're changing the mechanics and the dynamics of what we do, we actually increase the potential for injury. So we end up getting that one thing that we were really focusing on not getting, which is injured. From a mental perspective, or in a way that we can better have control over this, is we need to understand our blueprint and trust that we follow that blueprint. The reality is that we actually got a really good technique, we're less likely to become injured. So that's one aspect of the focusing on that performance. The second part of that is athletes tend to try and rush back into perform. And so they've not done enough mental preparation to be performing. So they go in there with doubt. So go in there with just trying to avoid getting hurt again. And again, all of these lead to an athlete who's not 100% convinced or not 100% committed to doing what they're supposed to do. So to prevent that kind of aspect, we need to set clear objectives. We need to treat coming back from injury like preparation for a competition. We'd build that funnel. We'd make sure we stick to that funnel. The fifth one is one that we're probably all very aware of, which is fears and anxiety. Well, this one is deeply rooted in the psyche of every athlete, worldwide, sport-wide, and level-wide. And again, there are many different contributors to athletes who have those fears and anxieties. Some are purely the nature of what we do for a living. We're out there performing in front of people, we're putting ourselves out there. Some are the result of how we do what we do, and that can be from past challenges, past competition, past results, and we're out there trying to prove a point. And some are externally driven and some are internally driven. And so that's, are you being driven by your organization, your coach, other people around you, or are you being driven by yourself? What we want to be able to do, and one of the many things we're going to focus on in this video, is we want to increase our internal referencing. What we do, how we do what we do, we trust ourselves over and above all the other noise that's going on around us. Humans love to watch competitors. From the days of the gladiator through to our modern athlete, it's a spectacle. And we also, as athletes, we want to be out there being watched by everybody. We want to be those number one people. Otherwise, we wouldn't be where we are. We're not blindsided by this. We know what to expect. We know what we signed up for. However, it doesn't stop us being anxious. It doesn't stop us being fearful about the consequences. This is often an external driver for us as well as an internal driver. And again, we don't have time to unpack all of these in this short video. However, if you want to better understand and address at a deeper level, then check out our Mental Gladiator training program. They're live 30-day intensive programs, all through Zoom. So you get to attend from anywhere around the world. It increases your mental resilience, your mental toughness, and it controls your outcome and your consistency through real clear strategies around mental performance. Okay, in this video, I just really do want to deal with one strategy for fears and anxieties. And that one has to be being more internally referenced. So what does that mean in plain English? It's about being able to trust that what you're doing is exactly the right thing for you, knowing you know what you need to know. And you execute in a way that it's just part of your DNA, your performance DNA. It's how you do what you do. There also, you want to put key people around you for external ratification. So that's, you know what you're going to do, you're going to execute that, but you've got a couple of people around you to kind of challenge that or confirm what you're doing. If it confirms what you're doing, then you just continue to keep applying. You trust what you're doing, you trust your key people around you and their entourage. If it challenges you, then you've got to look at it and say, right, I need to go back and reassess that process. That person's input may not be correct, but it's made me challenge it, which means I do need to better understand it. I need to get better outcome from that. So internally reference is trusting you. External ratification is putting key people around you that's going to allow you to challenge or confirm what you're doing is the right thing. It's going to help you manage your fears and your anxieties by building trust and belief in what you're doing. I hope these quick first steps have given you an interesting way of looking at your preparation and a valuable set of skills and tools to start applying. If it's highlighted things that you should be doing around your mental skills and your mental preparation, then you can always head over to smartmind.com and check out our suite of programs. And probably best place to do is sign up for our Mental Gladiator. My name's Dave Diggle and I'm your mental performance expert.